Good morning and welcome to the very first episode of Confluence, a podcast that brings together ideas and voices on water governance across South Asia. This podcast is produced under Transboundary Rivers of South Asia program of Oxfam, supported by the government of Sweden. TROSA is a multi-partner initiative in South Asia that connects communities across shared river basins to promote inclusive and sustainable water governance. My name is Grishma, and today we're exploring a framework for community led action, that is, the people's landscape approach. To help us understand this, I'm joined by three guests who have worked closely in this area. Our first guest is Anjil Adhikari, Climate and Water Lead at Oxfam in Nepal. Our second guest, Rajan Subedi, is the Program Manager for River Basin at Oxfam in Nepal. And our third guest, Moyna, is the Program Coordinator at Oxfam in Bangladesh. Thank you all for being part of this inaugural episode. Angel, let's start with you. Could you explain what the people's landscape approach is in simple words without any jargons? Imagine you're explaining this to my 11-year-old nephew. Over to you.
Thank you, Grishmaji. Explaining to an 11-year-old is definitely quite a challenge, but I would explain him or her in this way: that imagine your school has a big playground, and some children would want to play football, some would want to play basketball, some would want to sit under the tree and talk, and some might want to play table tennis near the playground, and some might want to play hopscotch, and some might want to just cross the playground and go to the canteen or drink water and across the playground from the tap. Now, everyone needs the same space, but in a different way and different time. And if nobody plans, nobody decides how the playground is to be used properly, then some children might use the playground to play football the entire day, and his or her junior who might be interested, or his friends who might want to play basketball, may not get space, and the one who wants to and some children who might want to cross the playground to go and fetch water from the tap may be pushed out or may not get opportunity to do that, and uh, and the playground may become unfair. So that's what a people landscape is, that we have a shared playground, but every student uses it. Every student, your senior and junior, uses it differently. So how do we make it fair for everyone? And coming back to the people landscape approach, then would be taking care of a shared space, I would say, in a fair way, so that people can come together. Now, if we talk about the same thing in the real world, it means there is a bigger land where there are trees, there are forests, there are rivers, and everyone and people, and everyone needs to use those resources in a different way and different times. So how do we make it fair for everyone? That is a people landscape approach. Over to you,
Okay.
Krishmaji.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angel. I think that was a very simple explanation that anyone can understand. I will definitely make my 11-year-old nephew listen to what you just said and let you know how he responds to it.
Thank you.
Now, going back to the topic, I think one thing that really kept repeating was people. The title itself has People's Landscape Approach. And to explain that in more detail, I would like to invite Rajan. So, Rajan, can you walk us through how communities lead decision making in practice and what challenges come up? And from your experience, how have you addressed them? Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Krishmaji. So, as Anjil mentioned, like it is the the platform that we have created through people landscape approach, where community leadership uh, has not only been taken as a symbolic, like unit. So it is an institutional and evidence driven mechanism that has been established through people landscape approach. So in practice, we started by bringing communities together with the local government. So, and there are technical agencies and other NGOs and local community level stakeholders at watershed level. So those were brought together. So instead of imposing solutions, so what we did is we facilitate for participatory assessments. So where community themselves analyze their landscape, so looking at water availability, land use, biodiversity, and the risks associated with that. Even the bottom up and top down approaches were also analyzed. So during that assessment, so those there were technical aspects and there were like local knowledges. So that those knowledges were assembled. Like they discussed each other. In the initial stage, it was really difficult for them to like understand. But after continuous discussions, the community were able to understand some technical aspect, whereas the technical experts they were start like understanding about the indigenous knowledge that community has. So take an example where we piloted the people landscape approach in the Rangoon watershed. So that's on the far western region of Nepal, where the community like they identified water as an entry point, so which is affecting agriculture, livelihood, and disaster risks. So that became an entry point, and we facilitated in supporting and creation of a multi-stakeholder platform. So where all the community people, government stakeholder from federal, provincial, and local level, they came together, and this helped in the co-development of watershed plan, prioritize investment, and help in monitoring the progress. Even the communities people were also engaged in citizen science. So the citizen science where communities they collected data on water quality, water level, and the local situations. So that also helps in like shifting the shifting the knowledge, how they used to look at water. Only the government were used to treat as a decision maker, but the community themselves they became a decision maker. So that also help in changing the narratives. So here, like I would like to summarize saying that how we, like supported communities, their communities were supported by like technically supporting them in generating evidences, setting priorities, and also understanding about the governance of that area. Now let me also share you about challenges. Like it's not easy as we drafted that document on people landscape approach, because there were a lot of challenge in terms of power imbalance, because different local community they do have different power, different institutions they do have different power, and they dominate on decision making. And even sometimes it was really difficult like to make marginalized communities like women and Dalits to feel very confident to speak about what they really feel. Sometimes even they don't understand. So the second challenge was on technical gap. So as we talk about watershed management, so there were less hydrometeorological units, really difficult to understand, like what really happened, no proper data recording, no proper information on land use planning, and even the communities were facing the challenges in terms of understanding the technical terminologies. The third major challenge was institutional fragmentation. Though everyone work like on the same environment, let's say on the same watershed, same Rangoon river, but they were working on silos in terms of, let's say, the department from water, forest, and agriculture, they do have their different plans. So then what we did like to overcome those challenges was, so if you imagine the origin of river to the river where like that river meets into another big river, so we considered that area that is called Rangoon watershed area. So in that area, to tackle the problem of like power imbalance, we established women empowerment centers. So that women empowerment centers that became a knowledge center. They started like discussing among themselves, so there was no dominance, because other like very elite people were not there in that group. So that helped like that boost their confidence, and among the representative of women empowerment centers, few women they participated into that watershed level meetings. So that means now like they were empowered separately and they became the part of it. The second, in terms of technical gap, so we also supported in terms of data visualizations. we supported in taking the confidence of federal government, developing water accounting tools. So that helps them to understand about so how much water is available in that area. So now people also understand the technical terms, why water accounting is very important. So how much water is available in that area and how to distribute that water. And third is in terms of institutional fragmentation, even the government of Nepal, we do have the constitution. The constitution says that the each municipality, how they coordinate with each other, has not been clearly spelled out. So in that situation, we discussed with the federal government, and based on the Water Energy Commission Secretariat, one of the leading institutions of government of Nepal, that supported in that supported in terms of like inviting three municipalities together in one watershed and they start working together. So we did a pilot MOU among those three municipalities for watershed conservation. So these are the like initiative that has really supported in terms of aligning the community level issues at watershed level to the federal level, and it has supported in terms of basin level planning. So that's why, so it has really helped in community leadership, so which is backed up by data, and it's an inclusive process, and also helps in like strengthening the institutional process of that area. So that's what I want to share. Over to Christmasy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rajan, for those deep insights and giving us so much detail about how you've worked in the Rangoon area of Nepal. Just a follow-up question I have on this. Like what I understood from your and Angel's response is that people's landscape approach is a multi-stakeholder decision-making process. So I'm just curious to know, because there are so many stakeholders involved in managing, let's say, a watershed area, and there are so many points of interest in that. So, from your experience, do you see some like any conflict arising out of that, or any disagreements arising from different interest group? If that does arise, do you have any insights on how do you resolve those?
Yes.
Over to you.
So yes, thank you. So when we were like, let me give you, and there are a lot of conflict, like why we develop this watershed level institution, watershed level multi-stakeholder platform is, so there are a lot of different interest, so within people communities, so within government institutions, even within donor agencies also. So different people have different like objectives. So one of the bigger challenge, like that came. So let me share you an example so that gives you a bit of clarity on. So different types of conflict that we faced is, so there is a lake called Alital. So in that lake, so people who were living downstream of that lake is the people of ward number 3, and they were getting water for irrigation from that lake. So the other side, so the ward number 9, so they were taking the water for drinking water purpose directly from the source. So because of climate change and other anthropogenic, like activities in that area, such as road construction, the volume of water from in the water source that declined. So during that time, what they did is from ward number 9, they took the water away. Like collected all water from the source, and that reduced, that depleted the water of that pond. So that issues also, like this type of issues that came into the multi-stakeholder platform. So then different people, they negotiated, they discussed, and they agreed that, like if they take, like drinking water is very important, but it is also quite important, like the people, they also need to get the water for irrigation. So the in multi-stakeholder platform, they discussed and they agreed. So what would be the alternative ways? So they discussed about, like the time. So they will take the water at the night time. So, and if the water for drinking water, if that is sufficient, then they will also, like make the minimum efficient use of, let's say, not say minimum use, but efficient use of water, so that the water, the remaining water that goes into the pond and the downstream communities, they get the water for irrigation. So similarly, there are challenges in terms of to whom to engage. So who need to be participated, and how the water available in the river that need to be distributed. So sometimes the agriculture team, they came and they demand more water, but in the multi-stakeholder platform, so we develop watershed level plan, and that watershed level plan that also helps and help in resolving different conflict arises in that area. Over to Krishmaji.
Thank you, Rajan. Thank you for those deep insights about how you're working in Nepal, especially in the Rangoon watershed area. Now, let's shift our focus towards Bangladesh. Moyna. So, TROSA's work in Bangladesh has laid important foundations for people's landscape approach. Can you walk us through how those experiences and learnings have helped shape this approach? Over to you, Moyna.
Thank you, Grishmaji. I was listening to Anjil Dai and Rajan Dai and thinking about TROSA's work in Bangladesh. So when we started working with riverine communities under TROSA back in 2017, one thing became immediately clear. Some of the most central actors in the river system are also the most invisible. And that was, for us, the fisher folks. Like in a country like Bangladesh, capture fisheries are huge and largely driven by small scale fishers. But when fish stock decline, somehow the blame lands almost entirely on them, as if overfishing is the only story. What I began to see on the ground was something much more complex. Rivers are not just ecological systems, they are contested spaces, because you have climate change impacts and disasters, you have conflicts over access and controls of open water, then you have multiple government and non-government agencies operating in the same landscape, often without coordination. And then there are all the actors living off the river: fishers, farmers, boat operators, sand miners, and even the tourism sectors also. And adding to that, there is rapidly expanding industries along the river banks. And of course, the whole biodiversity system that depends on the river. So, but when we see the conservation measures that often zoom in on just one group, the fisher folks, while ignoring how infrastructure like roads and bridges alter the river morphology, or how industrial pollution degrades water quality and the fish habitats. So the question we kept asking ourselves was, are we solving the problem or just shifting the burden? Because yes, we need development. Development is necessary. We need roads, we need industry, but where are we getting it wrong? Through TROSA, we started unpacking the riverscape differently, because it's not just an ecosystem, but it's a space of relationship, power, and the competing interests for different stakeholders. So we ask the questions like, who are the stakeholders, the real stakeholders, and then whose voices are shaping the decisions and whose are missing, and are communities part of decision making, implementing, monitoring, or are they are just expected to comply with whatever measures are decided? And are we ensuring principles like free, prior, and informed consent, and or bypassing them entirely? And beyond that, are we even seeing the full picture? Because there is gender dynamics, there is the role of women in fisheries, the indigenous identities, marginalization, intergenerational impacts, culture, spiritual connections, and everything. So, what I realized is that river governance is not just a technical issue, it's deeply political, and it's about understanding the power, trust, and accountability. And that's where the people landscape approach starts to take shape. It comes from this recognition that you cannot manage a landscape without understanding the people who live in it, depend on it, and are often excluded from decisions about it. So PLA for us is not a theory we adopted. It's actually something that emerged from the practice, from listening, from questioning, and to be honest, from being uncomfortable with the way things are being done. And it's about trying to rebalance, balancing the development and the conservation, balancing the human rights and the nature's rights, and most importantly, balancing the power, like those who hold the power and those who are the most affected by it. And in the end, like any landscape you can imagine, like it doesn't fall because of the because ecosystem is collapsing. It fails when the people holding it together are left out of the conversation. So that's where I understand that PLE is coming, addressing all the learnings from field experiences. Over to Grishma Bhai.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Moyna. This was a beautiful response to my question, and you spoke about the fisher folks in Bangladesh and lots of interest points related to river, like the spiritual aspect of it. But a follow-up question on this would be, Moyna, like when you developed this concept in Bangladesh and when you shared with some of the stakeholders, if you have, what was the response like? Could you share something on that?
Yes. So when we shared the idea of PLA with the stakeholders, we got positive responses. Like they were acknowledging that there is a lack of coordination, but there are challenges also. Like there are questions of the funding, the funding for the communities. If the fundings are, the ownership of the communities and the locally level fundings available in the local level, and then also the coordination within the different authorities. That is a bit of challenge, but we feel through the TROSA experience that if there is a way of finding a common interests among the stakeholders, like when we find it, then it is easier to work with the stakeholders, even though there will be some competition, there will be some conflict of the interests. But then again, like I said, we are finding the balance, like how much balance that can be done within the stakeholders' interests.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Moina, for that response and making us understand why balancing everything is so important when it comes to, managing our rivers properly. And now I'm towards my last question, so I'm going to bring back Angel again. And Angel, this time, can you explain us, like there are different models of conservations or development that has come up in development sectors. So can you explain how people's landscape approach is different to other models of conservation? Over to you.
Thank you, Grishma. I just want to go back to what Moyna said about balancing human right, balancing nature, and also making people accountable who hold the power and also who get affected by that. So, but again, I'm mindful that you also need to explain to your 11-year-old nephew. So I'll try to also simplify it in a way. So you see, the difference is basically on narrative, I would say. When we are saying PLA, the difference substantially lies on the narrative. So we are not the first ones to talk about it, definitely not the last ones. Yeah. And the world itself is quite an objective place, and our lens, I think, gives it that uniqueness. So I'll just try to explain the lens that we have on how it keeps itself in a different space. So, what it basically says is that, look, there is a shared space that everyone uses, again, giving the analogy of playground, where we have either contributed to protect the playground so strictly that no children can play it well, or in some places we have left the playground, kind of so unregulated that those who have the senior guys are using to use the playground just to play football, while not letting the juniors, sorry, juniors play with table tennis or the basketball. And when we say PLA, people landscape approach, what we are basically saying is that yes, we need to protect the playground, because if there is no playground, then no one can play. But we also need to protect the right of every children who might want to use that playground for different purpose, and also not just children, but also teachers and principals. Yeah. So the PLA neither keeps playground in the center, not just the children, but it looks at the wholesome connection of the children, the principal, the teacher, as well as the playground itself, and also that canteen, as well as the tap on the across the playground, so that everyone can exist in harmony. Again, like bringing that back, that word balance. Yeah. So I think that is where the major difference lies from typical developmental conservation approach. If you go back to the look into the typical developmental model, the focus would be basically on how do we equip the playground, like how do we install the goalpost, how do we install, like the collars in the ground, or how tall we want to have the basketball, like the ring. And in the conservation model, it would be more about how do we keep the playground clean, and that would end up saying no children will play in the playground. But in the PLA, we have shifted the narrative. We are saying playground is important, but equally the importance of playground lies on people playing on it, right? So in PLA, the focus is then on whether people are able to use the playground fairly and well, while also keeping it healthy. So the real shift, like I said, is choosing between, is from choosing between people or place to managing that connection between, the place as well as everyone who uses or are connected to it. Now, just think of playground as the entire earth that we live in, and students as people, you, me, and everyone who have that innate connection with the ecosystem that surrounds us. That is what I think is the major difference. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Angel. That was a really wonderful explanation in very simple words, simple language, using the analogy of children and playground and then relating it to the entire planet. So, thank you so much, all of you, for joining this insightful conversation. And that brings us to the end of our first episode. A huge thank you to Angel, Rajan, and Moyna for sharing such valuable insights on people landscape approach, especially in the context of Nepal, and Bangladesh. Thank you for tuning in to our debut episode, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode as we continue to explore the water that connects us all. Goodbye for now.